This is a little image of a statement from an interview, a mini interview that I did with the Blue Mountain Review on being a multiply neurodivergent writer and sort of, something that's a core value for me. But I want to start actually by um, just reading off of some notes that I have here on the poet Robert Francis, because the first thing that we'll be doing is looking closely at at a very short poem by Robert Francis. So my notes say, when introducing others to the poems of Robert Francis, I often begin by saying he is the Mr. Rogers of American poetry. He was first a mentee of Robert Frost, and later both Roberts were friends. Frost even said that Francis was, of all the great neglected poets, the greatest. Francis lived a simple life and a solitary life in Amherst, Massachusetts, in a 2-room house built from trees toppled by a hurricane. He called his house, where he lived for more than 60 years, Fort Juniper, because it was surrounded by junipers, a kind of tree he admired for the way it lives so close to the ground. In this poem, Francis slows down and, by extension, asks us, as we read along, to slow down with him, to, to reflect on a toad. Just like with junipers, Francis clearly had a soft spot for toads. I have adored the poems of Robert Francis since first encountering them. In fact, as a side note, I'm working with another neurodivergent poet to co-edit a new poetry series that will seek to publish one full-length poetry collection a year by a neurodivergent poet. And while we don't know for sure that Robert Francis was autistic or neurodivergent, we have our suspicions, and at any rate, absolutely love his poetry. So we're calling the series the Robert Francis Neurodivergent Poetry Series, and have a first collection we hope to publish in mind already. And back to the slowness and rest and joy all rolled into one little poem. So this poem is called Delicate the Toad, and it's the first of 2 poems in this presentation that will be followed by um, observations of a couple obvious features of each poem, a prompt, and an example. You can use the prompt again anytime you'd like, and also, of course, it's not necessary to even think of yourself as a poet, to try your hand at poetry, or to even think of yourself as a writer. I've led workshops where artists and musicians showed up and had a lovely time just trying their hand at something different, and then thinking about that, how that nurtured and strengthened their main area of creativity. So with each poem, I'll read it slowly, then pause a bit um, before reading it again. So Delicate the Toad by Robert Francis. Delicate the toad sits and sips the evening air. He is satisfied with dust, with color of dust. A hopping shadow now, and now a shadow still. Laugh, you birds, at one so far from flying, but have you caught, among small stars, his flute? And a bit of awkward silence, and um, I'll read the poem again. Delicate the toad. Delicate the toad sits and sips the evening air. He is satisfied with dust, with color of dust. A hopping shadow now, and now a shadow still. Laugh, you birds, at one so far from flying, but have you caught, among small stars, his flute? When slowing down to write a poem, or at least to try writing one, I feel it helps to lower the bar. I mean, by giving ourselves permission to be simple, at ease, loose, and even messy, we let go of any voices telling us if we write, it must be something important, something grand. We've all heard such voices at first externally until the day we internalized them, and they began insisting on trying to steer us from the inside. But I wonder, why important? Why grand? Why not ordinary instead? Maybe I pause to wonder about such things for being an ADHDer with learning disabilities. I'm off the rails in so many ways, so much of the time. On the face of it, divergence is not the norm, although for some of us, it is our normal. But what I mean by ordinary includes this neurodivergent normal. Ordinary includes how we are, warts and all, um, like warts, like toads have, and wounds and scars and all. This is in contrast, I think, to all those supposedly grand and important things we are socially conditioned to see as valuable. In all those ways, we are socially conditioned to try and fail, in our case, I think much of the time, to be. Next slide here. So features of this poem, while this poem is written like a finely cut gem, I like to think from his quiet and solitary circumstance, Robert Francis gave space and time, um, gave himself space and time, and that this is why his poem is so lovely. Two features of this poem are it is written in short lines that are carefully enjambed, which means the line ends in a way where it emphasizes forward momentum or some kind of other feature of the language. And it is arranged into 5 3-line stanzas that I want to say look like toads. And then the writing prompt that I came up with by thinking about the poem and kind of closing in on those two features that I see in it, although there are many other things I think to be seen in the poem. Um, the writing prompt says, think of something small and unassuming that you love. It could be something from nature, say an acorn, a leaf, a pebble, a snail, or a toad. Consider the shape of your small, unassuming thing. Can you shape your poem in a way that suggests its subject, or can you shape the stanzas that way? So the next slide is just to give an example. Here is a sample poem about a pebble that's also shaped sort of like a pebble. And I just called the poem The Pebble, and I wrote it to have an example to show here. So the poem says, I am walking along a creek with my brother and our mom's dog. My brother is picking up rocks and info dumping about how each may have been formed. and the geological history of the area. As we walk, we are both picking up flat stones to skip on the water to keep the dog, Chili, entertained. My brother is also excitedly pointing out fossils. Look at these ocean worms, he says. I love how perfectly they are preserved in the stone of the creek bed. This whole area used to be covered by shallow ocean. It is truly fascinating, all he has to say, in a pleasantly overwhelming way. Later, I won't remember it, and that's fine. I reach down at one point and pick up a smooth, dark pebble and put it in my pocket, along with the pumice stone, the chalk, and the small piece of granite I found that is still holding the fossilized cross section of a biggish ocean worm. And then here's the second poem that I came up with a prompt for, and this is one of my own. It's called Talking with Thunder. This poem was published in Mid-South Sonnets, a Bell Point Press anthology that basically collected sonnets, as the title indicates, written by poets associated with the Mid-South and the South in the larger sense. And I feel it goes nicely after a Robert Francis poem, as Francis was a master of whimsy, and this poem, for the nature of its conversation and the way thunder is anthropomorphized, is whimsical too. Unlike the Francis poem, the lines of this poem end occasionally in a loose way, especially how the second line of the second stanza ends with the adjective article a, and yet it's there is still structure, such as the second, fourth, and sixth lines of the first stanza, ending respectively in under, off rhyme, for, and or. The poem appears to be messy too, for the way commas are left out and the way all sentences, even when they are questions, end in periods. So this poem, Talking with Thunder. Did you hear that thunder? I asked. Yes, and I wonder which foot it is coming out from under, you replied. I am always working to transmute your music into my own, the thunder said. For anybody who has not yet heard of it, transmutation means change in ways like form or nature or substance or state. Will we be more aware once you've done your thing to our thing? We asked. I don't know, the thunder said. I am merely a mountain of sound, and sometimes things like rain or wind transmute me. It's nothing personal since I've never met them. What kind of logic is that? I said. If you were a mountain of sound, you'd understand, the thunder said, through us. And then again, Talking with Thunder. Did you hear that thunder? I asked. Yes, and I wonder which foot it is coming out from under, you replied. I am always working to transmute your music into my own, the thunder said. For anybody who has not yet heard of it, transmutation means change in ways like form or nature or substance or state. Will we be more aware once you've done your thing to our thing? We asked. I don't know, the thunder said. I am merely a mountain of sound, and sometimes things like rain or wind transmute me. It's nothing personal since I've never met them. What kind of logic is that? I said. If you were a mountain of sound, you'd understand, the thunder said, through us. And then next, we've got some features of this poem. Um, I've written here, often when writing poems, things I've been told not to do come to mind, and I find myself wondering if there is some way I can do the nay thing and still write a successful poem. Doing this, or even just attempting to do this, always fills me with joy. But I'm not a rebel just to be a rebel. If a poem is a box, I don't want to think inside the proverbial box, but I also don't want to only think outside of it. I want to reimagine what a box can be. So sort of a third option to the common binary inside the box and outside of the box. So two features of this poem are this poem is written in justified lines, which means all the lines are roughly the same length. And this poem is arranged in two 7-line stanzas, with the break between the stanzas being stretchy, is how I think of it, and giving a feeling that the poem could have been one block of 14 lines, like a little bit of the feeling why the stanza break. But I think that stretchiness is simultaneously a justification for the stanza break. And then the prompt I came up with is, if you were writing a poem about something that fills you with joy, what would you write about? How would you write about it? Would you write about a cherished person, place, or topic? Or would you make something up like I've done in Talking with Thunder? And then next, for the example to go with this poem, I've got insert your own poem here. But first, you must write it. So take 5 minutes now to write something while I write with you. I'm rooting for you. I believe in you. Um, and I may just actually hang out for 5 minutes and write something that I'll write on my phone. And if it doesn't quite work with the video, we can cut it out. Okay, maybe I'll do about 3 minutes for body doubling, mini writing, a body doubling mini writing session. Um, uh, because we've got 3 more slides to look at. A lot of times when I write, I'll write down a few words, phrase or two, sometimes a sentence or two, and then I'll pause and put my phone aside or close my notebook, and then think of the next thing, and then start back. And usually, I think the amount of time that it takes to write a poem doesn't really matter. It's sort of about the journey and the end result, but maybe for not having any kind of formal training with poetry and just sort of approaching it and learning it my own way, 5 minutes is typically enough time um, to finish the poem. So next slide here is a list of resources. First, I've got a list of poetry books in addition to my new book, which I'm like putting in a parentheses plug there. There's Robert Francis's collected poems, 1936 to 1976. He actually lived into the 80s. And there is a collection of poems that was edited by Henry Lyman called Late Fire, Late Snow. And it came out after Francis had passed away. But this is a great overview of uh, 40 years of his poetry and the numerous books he wrote during those decades. And then next I've got William Stafford, The Way It Is, new and selected poems, and also Ask Me, 100 essential poems of William Stafford, that was edited by his son, who was also a poet. His son's name is Kim Stafford. And then Naomi Shihab Nye, who was very much a student of William Stafford's. And in fact, she's a friend of mine, and she wrote a front note to the new and selected poems, The Way It Is, by William Stafford. And the last time I was in touch with Naomi, Kim Stafford and his wife were visiting San Antonio, visiting Naomi there. And she was saying in the email, so excited to be their car driver. She was, as the person from San Antonio who knows the city so well, she was shuttling them around, and I imagine having a great time. And then her book, Everything Comes Next, is collected and new poems, and it's sort of a book that's great for people interested in poetry of all ages. Um, and I'll also say here, um, next are some books on poetry craft by these poets that, accepting Robert Francis, that I've appreciated and learned from as a multiply neurodivergent person. I hope you too may find them helpful. So books on reading and writing poetry by William Stafford. There's a typo here with the random word "and," but there's Writing the Australian Crawl, Views on the Writer's Vocation, and that's full of mini essays, poems, sometimes clusters of poems, and interview excerpts. And I think basically this next book, You Must Revise Your Life, is the same kind of format. So very organic, very uh, easy to approach and dip into and dip out of. Like you can just sort of flip around and, as with a poetry book, and read, start by reading things that kind of jump out to you and catch your curiosity. And then Naomi Shihab Nye has a book that isn't about writing poetry. It's just fabulous, and it's called Never in a Hurry, Essays on People and Places. Naomi was born in St. Louis, Missouri. She had a white mother and a Palestinian father. Um, and she just has the most tremendous global view of the of life and the world. The next poet I have listed here is Carl Phillips, and he has a book, a very short book called The Art of Daring, Risk, Relentlessness, Imagination. And then a second book that's new, that's actually out. I think I have a copy of it right here, since this is Cultural Autism Studies at Yale. This book is out on Yale University Press, and it's called, of course, My Trade is Mystery, 7 Meditations from a Life in Writing. And this book is helpful even if you aren't a poet. You I think that there's one of the recommendations on the back says that, says something to that effect, that, just reading it, you'll be a better person for, reading it and spending time with it. And certainly true of Phillips's poems, and of course, of his essays as well. Um, and then next here, I've got just a quick slide on starting your writing practice, and uh, I'll just sort of leave it as a slide. And then lastly, I've got, because we're short on time, I've got a slide here of online resources, um, including 3 great poetry resources, and then another one that has a fabulous poetry catalog, and lastly, the link to my link tree. And that's it. Happy writing.